Hello everyone, this is Gene and I'm back with another video. So this video is inspired today by, of all people, Dan Slott, who will not be making a appearance in my video because, frankly, I'd rather look at Big Barda than look at him. I'm just not in the mood. But anyway, what I want to talk about today is politics and comics. Now, the reason I say Dan Slott inspired this is because it came to my attention that recently Dan Slott was on Twitter and he was behaving like Dan Slott typically does on Twitter, which is that he says angry things about Republicans, how he doesn't like them, how they're hateful, how they're evil, how they're this and how they're that. And of course, people have called him out and been insulted. I think young Ripper 59 did a video on it, which I'll link to it. But I'm not really interested in responding to Slott per se in this video because this is typical of Dan Slott. If you followed Comicsgate, especially in the beginning, if you're familiar with the work of, say, Doug Ernst, he has been calling out Dan Slott on this type of behavior for years. So if you're familiar with his work, or if you're familiar with Comicsgate in particular, the critic side, the OG, I guess you would call it, Comicsgate and whatnot, this is probably of no surprise to you. But what I wanted to address is the bigger picture in my mind, right? Which is not Slott's rantings, I don't care. But it's more of this idea and this debate that keeps going on about whether or not comic books or media in general should be used to express one's political and or social views. So here's my nuanced take on it. As Sturgid recently referred to me as Captain, what is it, Captain Context, I think he said. So here I am. I'm still looking for a fancy fuzzy hat. But here I am, Captain Context, reporting for duty. So I'm going to give my opinion on this. First of all, we need to remember what comics are. Comics ultimately are a creative medium. And all creative mediums, whether they be comics, movies, sports, fashion, music, video games, sculptures, scrolls, novels, scrawlings on walls. All means of creative expression, all creative mediums throughout the history of humanity, regardless of culture, religion, country, or anything else. All these creative mediums, everything I've listed and everything I have forgotten to mention, everything has been used to express individual and or collective thoughts on what's going on in life and what's going on in the world, both at home and abroad. So yes, comics have been, will continue to be, and should be used as a way to express one's thoughts and feelings and opinions on the state of the world and the state of human nature, right? The state of humanity. That's going to include political and social. Comics themselves have long been a part of this, right? Back in the 40s at least. Probably goes back even further, but I know that in the 40s, characters like Superman were used as American propaganda. In fact, for the longest time, long after World War II, Superman stood for truth, justice, and the American way. Emphasis on the American way, which, given after the war years, would have been anti-communism, right? Just take a look, for example, at a Superman Red Son, which was recently adapted into an animated film. Okay, that was propaganda. That was addressing a social and political issue of the day. Okay? Okay. And comics, as I was saying, have been subject to this. For example, the Comics Code, which was enforced until what? I think what, the late '90s or the early 2000s, when it was like officially gotten rid of. But it got looser and looser and more lenient as the years went on. But in its most, I would say, I guess, influential years, right, where they had the most say in power, the Comics Code wouldn't allow comic book writers, at least those who were writing for like mainstream companies, or they were releasing books that a general audience, in particular young kids, could read. They couldn't mention things like drugs. They could, in very limited doses, feature guns, but it always had to be in the hands of a bad guy, right? They always had to make sure that if they showed somebody with a gun, it was a bad guy to promote the message that, criminals are bad, guns are bad, right? Or if somebody was, say, shown smoking, right? It had to be a bad guy, couldn't be a good guy, and stuff like that. And you couldn't feature like the occult, right? No zombies, no monsters of that sort, and you certainly couldn't feature sex, right? And of course, these regulations loosened as society changed, right? The 40s were very different from the 60s, and the 60s were very different from the 80s, and so on and so forth. So, as the regulations loosened, right, and as societal views changed, right? The comics in themselves changed, and then the social issues that they could tackle openly changed. For example, there's, what was it, a DC comic back in the 80s. Well, there was DC and Marvel, right? But there were DC and Marvel comics back in the 80s that say, for example, tackled drugs, right? They tackled the drug epidemic of that time, right? Cloak and Dagger from Marvel were made to address that. That was how Marvel did their whole, say no to drugs, kids, PSA, using those two characters. And then I think it was Green Arrow. He had a sidekick. I think his name was Speedy, right? And he got hooked on heroin, and there was this whole storyline about that, right? So my point being is that comic books have always been used to address political and social issues of the day. Just look at stuff like, say, Watchmen. Or even look at this image. I know that it's hard to read, but I'll give a little context. The lady here in the center is Big Barda of the New Gods, wife of Mr. Miracle, Scott Free. And she looks like she's moving some sort of World War II cannon. And one of the guys here says, "This women's lip thing is getting more serious than I thought." Right? There's an overt reference in a comic book from the 1970s written by Jack Kirby himself, referencing a political and social issue of the day, which was the second wave feminist movement. Marvel had their own response to the second wave feminist movement. Her name is Miss Marvel. And if you've read or if you are familiar with the origins of the character or have read the 1977 to 1978, 79 run, right? Her character was very much steeped in and a reflection of the second wave feminist movement of the day. In fact, the fact that she's called Miss Marvel is a political statement in and of itself, right? This was at the time when you had Miss Magazine, right? In fact, Miss Magazine is referenced in the Miss Marvel comic as Woman Magazine, right? But it's Miss Marvel, Miss Magazine. Even at that time, right? I don't quite know what you call this, right? But you have like Mr., Mrs., Miss, right? This was a time period when women who were single, who were career women, right? Or who were, say, divorced, were embracing Miss as a title, right? It wasn't Miss, M-I-S, as in a mistress or something. And it wasn't Mrs. because they were unmarried, right? So they took to Miss, right? To basically make their own statement about how, they were, I guess, for that time, strong, independent women who didn't need or have a man in their life at that time. And believe me, if you've read this and you've read the letter section, which I believe was referred to as misprints, interestingly enough, back then. You'll see that many of the letters openly reference and talk about the feminist movement of the day, and there are letters for it, and there are letters against it. In particular, as regards to her costume, because while you can't see it here in this image, her original costume, the lower portion, right, where her stomach is, like her lower stomach is exposed in this odd, like, triangle cut. And it's the same thing on the opposite side on her back. And there's, and then of course there's the sash around her throat, which would later be moved down to her hips. But there was debate in the letter section of the original 1970s Miss Marvel run about whether or not the costume was too sexy and whether or not the character was empowering or if she was being sexually objectified and all this other stuff, right? The stuff that we are passionately debating and defending and debunking online today was stuff that was being debated in the same year that Star Wars came out, right? So in the end, none of this is new. None of this is new at all. The problem with SJWs, with modern day progressives, is that they want every story to be a Miss Marvel story. They want every story to be a political statement. Not only a political statement, but their political statement. And that's the problem. Because while creative mediums have always been used to express individual and or collective views on life and everything that goes on in life, so that it also includes politics of various types, social issues of various types and whatnot. Not every single piece of media made in a particular medium is designed to make some sort of statement. Let me use the band U2 as an example, because I like Bono. Okay? And I like their music, right? It's a well-known fact that U2, in particular Bono, right, has a certain political slant, and especially a religious one, right? He's an outspoken Christian, right? He basically thinks he literally is rock and roll Jesus. And I speak as somebody who likes Bono. But here's the thing. While U2 has a lot of songs that deal with social and political issues of a time, right? Whether it's MLK, whether it's Pride in the Name of Love, which references MLK, right? Talks about the moment he was shot. Whether it's songs like, excuse me, Wake Up Dead Man, which is, that was actually a song about Jesus and Jesus coming back, and Bono kind of being frustrated that the second coming hasn't happened yet. But there's also other songs such as Sunday Bloody Sunday, right, and so many songs, especially in their early days, that were responses to the social and political issues going on at the time, in particular Ireland, in particular the Troubles, right, at that time. But not every U2 song is a political response to something going on in Ireland, right? For as many songs as they have that are talking about, right, political strife and terrorism and all this other stuff, which was a very real thing going on in the 80s because of the conflict between Ireland and the British and the IRA and all that. There were songs about love. There were songs about lust. There were songs about breakups. There were so many, right? You had what was it? Desire, which didn't have much of a political statement to that song. You had New Year's Day was kind of a political statement for its time, but you had other songs just in their entire catalog, right? There were songs that Bono wrote about his mother's passing and how it impacted him. I think what I Will Follow is about that, or at least in part about that, right? And then of course over the years, right, he's written many different songs, right? There's everything from songs about having a moment of surrender, although this is like way down later on in their career, which is about like at least in my I always thought it was about a druggie who's kind of like had like that like moment of that like that eureka moment, right? Where they realize, oh God, I have fallen so far, I need to get help. That's not a political statement, right? A song about a druggie coming to that eureka moment is not a political song. You think about One, right? That's not a political song. One is about a breakup, right? At the time, the band was falling apart, right? You think of songs like "With or Without You," right? That was Bono's conflict over his family and his rock and roll lifestyle, and how he wanted to have both and couldn't, or felt he couldn't. You have songs like "Where the Streets Have No Name" or "The Joshua Tree," and just so many other tracks, right? "Love Is Blindness," right? That's about a marriage falling apart. Not every single song in their catalog is about uh, social issues, right? A lot of it is, but a lot of it isn't. And I would say that's the same for pretty much any creative medium, right? That, yeah, some things, depending on the artist, are going to be about social and political issues of the day, but not everything that an artist makes, and not everything that is made in a particular medium is about commenting on the world, right? And the problem with SJWs is that that's what they want everything to be. They want everything to be commentary, and their commentary on what the world is right now. It's got to be about Trump. It's got to be about Brexit. It's got to be about Comicsgate. They don't know how to just let people be. And here's the thing, especially in comic books, and this is no doubt true for other creative mediums, but here's the thing about comic books. Comic books are not shy and never have been shy, especially I would say from the 70s on, about addressing social and political issues of the day. But the thing is that for every God loves, man kills, you have that one time when Lois Lane became black. And no, I'm not joking. You can literally go to Google and type in Lois Lane, I am curious, parentheses, black. Don't forget the exclamation mark. So anyway, that's the video. I wanted to end on this image because I like it. So let me know what you think, and I will see you all on the next one. To all of my new subscribers, thank you. I hope you continue to enjoy the content. And to everyone who has been here, thank you. I hope you continue to enjoy the content. So I will see you all around. Have a good night, everyone. Or a good day, wherever you are. And be safe out there. This coronavirus thing is crazy. They're pretty much damn near shutting down New York City. So be careful out there. Wherever you are and whatever you're doing, be happy, be healthy, and stay safe. See you around. Bye.